Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson weren't just difficult behind palace doors. Staff say they were so disruptive, so exhausting to deal with, that the situation reportedly escalated all the way to the Queen herself. And that's the part most people don't understand. Because this wasn't about one bad day, or one rude moment, or a single staff complaint. According to insiders, there was a strange pattern inside their household, the kind of behavior that quietly breaks an entire team over time. And for the Queen to step in personally, that almost never happened, unless something had become completely unbearable. Now, with the latest Epstein document dump dragging their names back into public conversation, those old staff accounts suddenly feel a lot more important and a lot more unsettling. Because when you line up what former employees have been saying for years with what's being exposed now, a very different story starts to emerge, one the palace has worked hard to keep buried. So today, we're going inside the claims staff made, the moment the Queen reportedly intervened, and the reason Andrew's world has shrunk so dramatically that even now some people allegedly refuse to work around him. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why the royal family has been trying to distance itself for so long. If you want more stories like this, the ones the headlines don't fully explain, make sure you subscribe now, because we're starting with the part they never wanted public. It didn't start with headlines, it started with habits. Inside the palace, routine is everything. Meals are timed, rooms are prepared in advance, staff know exactly when they're needed. But according to former employees, Andrew and Sarah didn't follow that rhythm at all. There were days, staff claim, when they simply wouldn't leave their bedroom, yet the kitchen was still expected to operate on demand. Breakfast at noon, lunch at 4, elaborate dinners late at night, and then snacks hours later. At first, some thought it was just a phase, a newly married couple adjusting to royal life. But it didn't stop, and the unpredictability wasn't minor, it disrupted the entire household. Because when one schedule collapses inside a royal residence, everything collapses. Maids reportedly weren't allowed in to reset rooms for days. Beds went unmade, cleaning rotations stalled. Staff were left waiting in hallways, unsure whether to knock or stay silent. And that hesitation created tension that built quietly shift after shift. But the real breaking point wasn't the strange hours, it was the waste. Royal kitchens are designed to avoid excess. Ingredients are measured, portions are controlled. The Queen herself was known for strict discipline when it came to meals. Yet chefs were allegedly scrambling to prepare fresh dishes at random times, only for food to go untouched. Senior staff were said to be horrified. And when people inside the palace start whispering about gluttony, it means something has gone very wrong. Complaints began rising through internal channels, slowly at first, then more urgently, because this wasn't just inconvenience, it was chaos in a system built on precision. And then something rare happened. The concerns didn't stay at staff level. They reportedly reached the master of the household, and from there, they went even higher. Because when the Queen herself intervenes over meal schedules and bedroom routines, you have to ask what else was happening behind those doors. And this was only the beginning. Here's what makes the staff story so unsettling. The complaints weren't just about messy routines or unpredictable meals. Former insiders say the deeper problem was Andrew himself. Because across different homes, different years, and different staff teams, the same description keeps coming up. Not someone constantly shouting, not someone openly explosive, but someone who could turn cold in an instant, someone who expected absolute loyalty, instant compliance, and personal devotion, while giving very little stability in return. And that kind of environment doesn't create one dramatic incident, it creates fear. According to multiple accounts from royal biographers and former staff, Andrew could be moody and unpredictable, with irritation that seemed to appear out of nowhere. One moment everything was fine, and the next someone was being treated like they'd committed a serious offense. But the strangest part? Staff say it wasn't always clear what they'd done wrong. Instructions could be vague, expectations could shift, and yet the consequences were very real. People reportedly found themselves suddenly frozen out, reassigned, or quietly pushed aside after falling out of favor. And in a royal household, that kind of silent punishment carries a message. It tells everyone else, watch yourself. Over time, insiders say Andrew's circle grew smaller. The number of people he trusted shrank, and the ones who remained were often the ones willing to tolerate the most. But then his public role began collapsing. The Epstein connection became impossible to ignore. The pressure increased. The palace started pulling away, and instead of that easing his behavior, former staff suggest it may have made it worse. Because when someone is used to privilege, used to being obeyed, used to never being told no, losing status doesn't always humble them. Sometimes it makes them more bitter. And that bitterness, staff claim, seeped into the atmosphere of the household. But even that wasn't the most damaging part, because while Andrew's temperament was becoming harder to manage, Sarah's behavior was creating a completely different kind of chaos. And staff say when those two forces combined, it wasn't just exhausting, it became unbearable. At first, Sarah Ferguson didn't come across as intimidating. In fact, many former staff describe her as warm, chatty, disarming, the kind of person who could make you feel like part of the family within minutes. But that warmth, according to insiders, could shift without warning. Because behind the laughter and easy conversation was something far less stable, a lifestyle built on impulse. Plans changed constantly, dinners were arranged at the last minute, guests appeared with little notice, and when that happened, staff weren't asked, they were expected. One evening might end quietly, the next could stretch late into the night, with rooms reset again and again, drinks replenished, food prepared long after scheduled hours. And the problem wasn't entertaining itself, it was the unpredictability. Royal households function on structure, rotations, timetables, precision. But when everything revolves around someone's mood, that structure starts to crack. Staff reportedly found themselves staying hours beyond shifts, only to repeat it the next day. And here's where it became more complicated. Even after the separation and divorce, Sarah and Andrew remained closely linked, living in proximity, appearing united publicly, maintaining what they called a strong friendship. But insiders say that dynamic created confusion inside the household. One day they were aligned, the next distant. Instructions could come from either side. Emotional tension didn't always stay private, and staff were left navigating an atmosphere that shifted without explanation. But there was another layer few people talk about. Sarah's past financial scandals from the 1990s had already strained her credibility inside royal circles. Allegations had surfaced, deals had been questioned, apologies had been issued, and although years had passed, some insiders say trust never fully returned. So when chaos resurfaced inside the household, it didn't exist in isolation, it carried history with it. And then came the moment that changed everything. because once the Epstein controversy intensified, those old complaints didn't just sound inconvenient, they sounded like warning signs. Then the Epstein documents resurfaced, and suddenly old stories didn't feel old anymore. Names appeared in email exchanges. Associations that many thought had faded were dragged back into public view. And while documents don't automatically equal guilt, the timing couldn't have been worse, because this wasn't happening in isolation. Andrew had already stepped back from public duties. Military titles were gone, patronages removed. The infamous interview years earlier had done irreversible damage, and now, with fresh headlines circulating, the pressure inside palace walls reportedly intensified. But here's where it gets even more revealing. The response from the institution wasn't defensive, it was distancing. Statements emphasized cooperation with authorities. Senior royals made it clear Andrew was now a private citizen. And quietly, almost overnight, his living situation changed. After more than 2 decades at Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion in Windsor Great Park was no longer his base. The move happened discreetly, late, minimal attention. And that detail alone raises questions, because relocations inside royal life are rarely random. Andrew was shifted to Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, a far smaller, more secluded property. A temporary stop, reports said, before a move to Marsh Farm, a modest 5-bedroom farmhouse still undergoing preparation. From grand estate to farmhouse, that's not just downsizing, that's a shrinking world. But even inside his new surroundings, the controversy didn't fade. Multiple reports suggest some staff were uncomfortable working around him. Some allegedly declined assignments. Morale, insiders claim, was complicated by his status as a public pariah. And when staff begin refusing roles connected to a former senior royal, that signals something serious. Because royal households are built on discretion and duty, refusal isn't common. And there's another detail that adds an unexpected layer. Former accounts have described Andrew as highly particular about his private space, including claims that items in his bedroom had to be arranged in exact positions, stuffed animals reportedly placed in precise order, everything aligned just so. Small detail? Maybe. But when someone's world is shrinking and control over public life disappears, the need to control private surroundings can intensify. Isolation grows, staff numbers shrink, trust narrows. And what happens when someone used to privilege suddenly finds themselves without it? That's the question echoing now. Because what's unfolding isn't just a scandal, it's a collapse of status. And the final pattern might be the most telling part of all. What makes all of this so difficult to brush off is the consistency. Different years, different residences, different staff members, and yet the same themes keep surfacing again and again. Entitlement, unpredictability, and a complete lack of consideration for the people expected to keep everything running. And that's not normal in royal life. Because royal households are built to handle pressure, they're trained for discretion, they tolerate difficult personalities, they survive chaos when necessary. So when multiple former staff members describe a situation as unbearable, it means the strain went beyond the usual demands of service. The early complaints weren't just about odd schedules, they were about a household that revolved entirely around impulse. One moment calm, the next tense. One day unified, the next emotionally confusing. Staff reportedly felt like they were constantly anticipating moods instead of following routine. And that kind of environment doesn't just exhaust people, it changes them. Some former aides have described low morale, high anxiety, and a constant fear of being blamed for decisions they didn't even make. Others say the household felt unstable, like walking into a room where you could sense irritation before anyone even spoke. But here's the detail that matters most. Royal staff almost never speak publicly. They're trained not to. They sign agreements. They protect the institution. And many of them carry their experiences silently for decades. So when people finally start talking, it's usually because the experience stayed with them long after they left. And now, with Epstein-related headlines dragging everything back into the spotlight, those former accounts aren't being dismissed as petty complaints anymore. They're being reread like evidence of something deeper. Because when you strip away titles, strip away the palace, strip away the protection, what remains is the person. And the people who worked closest to Andrew and Sarah seem to be saying the same thing. The behavior never really changed. The only thing that changed was how much the system was willing to absorb. And that's why his world looks the way it does now. Fewer allies, fewer staff, fewer places to hide. But the most unsettling part isn't where he lives, it's what the palace seems to be quietly admitting by letting him fall this far. And that leads to one final question, one the royal family will never answer out loud. Strip away the mansion, strip away the uniforms, strip away the protection. What's left? Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor now lives far from the grandeur he once occupied. His public role is gone, his circle is smaller. The institution that once absorbed every shock now keeps its distance, and the stories that were once whispered by staff are being revisited with new weight. Because when the structure disappears, patterns become clearer. For years, complaints were managed quietly, adjusted internally, smoothed over. But now, with status reduced and scrutiny intensified, the insulation is thinner than ever, and the same themes keep resurfacing: unpredictability, entitlement, emotional strain on the people expected to serve without question. The Epstein fallout didn't create those stories, it amplified them. And maybe that's why this moment feels different. Not just another headline, not just another controversy, but a visible contraction of influence that even royal tradition couldn't prevent. So here's the question that lingers. Did Andrew and Sarah ever truly understand the impact their behavior had on the people around them? Or did the system protect them for so long that accountability never felt necessary? Because in the end, reputation isn't destroyed in a single scandal. It erodes in patterns. If you found this breakdown revealing and you want more deep dives into the stories behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe. There's always more beneath the surface, and we're just getting started.